Guys, it's Chris from Breweries, Bars, and Beer Food. We're still hanging out in Bend at the Deschutes Brew Pub, and you guys all know Chef Jeff. How's it going this morning, Jeff?
Doing great, man. How you feeling?
I am doing outstanding. I got a beer
cool.
in my hand. So what are you drinking?
It's the Bridge Burner IPA. This is one of our small batches that we do right here at the Brew One, is what we call it, because this was the original brew house where Deschutes Brewery began. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's a nice small batch, a little higher in alcohol, and that's why we drink that in the snifter.
Nice, nice. I have the Bachelor Bitter, which is actually a beer that's only available here in Bend, not even at the Portland Brew Pub. And this has actually been a beer that's been available here for almost the entire time the pub has been here. It's one of those beers that they started with. It's been really popular here in Bend, but just been real consistent. People love it here. And I'm gonna tell you something. This is a really, really good beer. Nice, easy, sessionable, 5% alcohol. This is really delicious.
Yeah, cool, man.
So anyway, we love talking food. You and I, we get together and we talk food, we talk beer, we have a good time. Let's talk a little bit about what the brew pubs, both in Portland and here, are doing with their food.
Well, you know, our culinary vision is much like what we do with our beers. And obviously, you know, like we talked about in the kitchen, is that, you know, we really look for quality of ingredients and local sustainable operations. But it's really simplicity with food, I think, as we discussed as well. I mean, you can call some of our food comfort. I mean, you can see what I threw together in the kitchen. Some of it's comfortable, some of it's a little more technical and fun.
Yeah.
You know, and so we really try to deliver really pure flavors, really clean, try not to muddy things up. You know, so really the flavors pair well with the beer, because I think, you know, we're really all about our beer, and food is, I would never say it's secondary, but, you know, getting beer and food, getting beer with food, and all that is really what we're all about. And me personally, you know, as we discussed as well, you know, coming from the East Coast, a lot of Italian roots and things like that in my culinary past, I just really think the simplicity and leaving food to its own devices is really what succeeds with the beer a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've talked a lot about just in general the craft beer movement, but the craft food movement as well, which actually I don't want to say predated craft beer, but was on the uprise with people talking about organic ingredients and local ingredients and farm to table, doing all those things. Of course, GABF every year they do a farm to table event, which is just absolutely amazing. And so the beauty of doing these things and having these really great ingredients and starting with this, and what that ends up being in your final meal.
Sure, absolutely. And you know, really, I think that you know, as we continue to grow our food businesses and, you know, do more in the culinary world, we're finding that, you know, the trend right now with beer and food is just off the hook. You know what I mean? It's really, I started with Deschutes Brewery 5 years ago. I was the opening chef of our Portland pub. And now, you know, as the executive chef of the company, you know, we're really trying to, you know, keep identity in each city we're in, you know, and really using the people that are there and focusing on them. You know, like we discussed, I've got Coleman Ranch beef in Portland. We have the Borland beef here in Bend. So, you know, our burgers taste a little bit different, but that's kind of the fun. Just like you said about that beer or this beer, it's worth coming over the mountains to, you know, going to each pub if you have the opportunity and you're visiting Oregon, or if you live here. Obviously, you've probably already been to both if you know what you're doing. But so it is. It's a lot of fun. It's neat to see this trend continuing. You know, it's like when I first met the people of Deschutes Brewery and looked at becoming a chef on their team, I was like, do I really want to leave fine dining to go to a brew pub, because the food usually kind of stinks in a lot of places, no offense, but it was still a developing art form, is a better way to put it. And so to see it make this much growth in 5 years, I can just imagine what's going to happen in 10 years. And honestly, I can't wait to see the rest of the places you're going to be visiting, so I can see what some of the other guys are doing out there.
I can't wait to see them as well. And you know, that's another great thing you mentioned. You talk about the difference between, you know, Portland and here. The menus are obviously going to be different. You've got different towns. Portland's obviously really close to the water, so you probably do a lot more seafood there.
Absolutely. I mean, we do some seafood here. We're not too far away, but it is nice. I mean, I've got some really local fishermen that, you know, pretty much tell me what's coming in on the boat the next day. we roll with that. And you know, we do use some seafood from the East Coast and from Alaska and some other areas, of course, but for the most part, we try to keep it right off our backyard there.
Try to keep it local.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there things that you notice in the Portland pub that are specifically different than what you see in the Bryn pub?
Well, our pizzas are really different. I do more of a flatbread style pizza up there. They do more of a risen crust here. Currently, we're running different angles on different burgers with different beers. So yeah, I mean, the menus are maybe 50% the same. So, right. Being in the Pearl District of Portland, it's a pretty traveled area of town. We see a lot of tourists there, as we do here as well. But we attract different crowds, but it's so we try to cater to not only the local purveyors, but also the local palates and nice. What the expectations of the towns are, and right. Really pay attention to what the locals, because obviously the Bend is very based around locals and the people around here, and we like to think that in Portland too. But the reality of it is we also have to cater to people from all over the world that come to try our brews.
Yeah. Well, of course, you've got a big advantage in working with a company like Deschutes that has such a passion certainly for their surroundings and for the local environment and supplying things locally.
Absolutely.
But it's such a great thing to have a company that is so deeply passionate about doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And using those good ingredients and ending up with a great dish. And so you've got access to some pretty phenomenal beers, not just that you can cook with, but you can do some great pairings with and absolutely. Beer dinners with and special releases. Talk about some of the events and things you do with some of the beers that Deschutes makes.
That's a great question. And one thing that, really is an advantage too is also using the parts of beers, the wort, the hops, hop mashed potato, wort reduction with elk meatballs and sweet potato gnocchi with
nice.
Little goat cheese cream, really
yes,
just
please.
Right? So, playing around with those things, and as we saw on the dishes in the kitchen, it goes great in all the sauces and finishing, and then the Black Butte Porter braising. I mean, so that's phenomenal. And so in response to your question, as far as like some of the cool events we've been doing lately, we did a collaboration with Hair of the Dog, and we created a beer out of 4 different beers in different barrels. And what I did is that I got each one of those 4 beers that made the 5th final beer, and we did a 5-course meal. I did this with the chefs of a restaurant called Wildwood in Portland. Great, awesome crew of chefs up there as well. And we put together that 5-course meal, pairing with each part and then finishing on the final collaborative beer. And that was really sick, because we had some souring, we had some oak. I mean, there was so much characteristics in that beer. My past, I did tons of wine dinners. This was probably the most like a wine dinner than anything I've done in the 5 years. So that was probably my top one so far. That's
pretty awesome. And earlier we were talking about the barrel age program, and one of the things that Ryan mentioned is we know that barrel aging can do different things to different beers, and even from one barrel to the next can be a completely different thing based on what was in that barrel or any remaining yeast or bacteria or anything like that. And you were telling us about one barrel that soured more than you expected it to sour, and now you're using it as a malt vinegar.
It's our own house-made malt vinegar.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, it came out of a beer called Green Monster, another one of our kind of smaller releases that doesn't go in bottles, only in the pubs. And I don't know the actual chemical process that vinegar, when it happens or anything, but Cam O'Connor, one of our master brewers, kind of found this out, and he came to me and he's like, what do you think about this? And we actually had like 13 different barrels that went into different stages of a couple different beers, and a couple of them were just terrible. They tasted like the pharmacy, rubbing alcohol almost, and but then a couple of them just had this amazing vinegar characteristics. So we worked on it, we aged it out, and currently I use it in dinners and special events. I mean, we don't have a ton of it, so I usually only use it in specials, not as menu items, but because the process does take a while. But our goal is to continue the process and someday be able to offer that on the table with like fish and chips and fries and all that kind of stuff.
That just sounds amazing.
So pretty early in the growth stage on the vinegar program, but it is going to be off
And
the
one
hook.
of those things you just kind of stumble into. Hey, by the way, we have this, and we didn't know it.
Right? Isn't that the beauty of what we're involved with?
It's so awesome, and that's what we have fun playing with our beer, playing with our food, and coming up with new and crazy things. And you guys know that both with your food and Deschutes with the beer. Home brewers out there, they know, they play, they have fun with things. Home chefs out there are, having fun in the kitchen and trying different things. And of course, everything from this show, we're going to be putting some recipes online for you guys to try and be able to make these things at home and just, have some fun. And that's what craft beer and craft food should really be all about. Just having a good time and in making every beer, making every meal an experience. So, Chef, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming out here.
Yeah, my
guys,
pleasure.
You got to come to Deschutes. You got to come visit Bend. You got to come visit Portland. It is just so amazing out here. Bend has so much to see and do, not just beer, but the ale trail is really popular. So make a trip out here. It's totally going to be worth your while. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.